So the backyard rink, last year, I had trouble with it for two reasons. One, it was just we started a little bit late, but the main reason was you never know how unlevel your land is until you build a backyard ice rink. So you find out, that we would have like 1 inch of ice in one side and 12 inches of ice in the other side, and just getting 12 inches of water to freeze, very horrendously difficult. So this year, see, we live in where we're not quite like Michigan, like you or Boston, where you guys can make ice, or Buffalo, where you can make ice easily. We are always on the edge of 32. We live life right around 32 degrees in the winter, so it's like never. It's not, and to really make good ice, you got to be under like 20 degrees for a week or two, in a row, and then you're going to be set. But we don't get that too often here. So what I did is I decided, instead of just doing it like I did it last year, which was just basically building boards and putting a tarp in and just freezing it, I'm actually building a structure that's going to raise the entire thing off the ground like a deck, by about 6 inches in some spots and by about 2 inches in the other. But it essentially will make it freeze better because bridges freeze before road surfaces, that kind of thing, and also make it totally flat and even. So. I've never built anything in my life. I'm not a carpenter by trade, but I'm having fun with it. I don't know if you can see this or not. I'm going to try to put this up here so you can see. Okay, so see, let's focus in. There we go. Focus there. Okay, good. So these upward poles. Those are the corners and basically. So I'll show other angles of this as you get. This is my back. This is one corner of my backyard. The fencing is already there, so we're building with inside this fencing. And so it's going to be really cool eventually. But by the end of this weekend, we'll have all the thing laid down. The hardest thing was, of course, for a person like me, squaring it off, figuring out how to level something at all. How to level a 40-foot by 20-foot object before you're building it. That's just like, okay, what the hell? How the hell do you do that? I know how to level, I know what level. I know following little, bulbs of water. I get that, but.
I would suggest putting in a text or a phone call to Dan Craig. Maybe he can help out with the.
I know.
I think he's a little busy right now, but
to level this deck, what I'm doing, because most people build decks, they don't have to be absolute. I'm sure your decks are all going to want them to be level, but this is really important that it's level, so I can have just like 1 or 2 inches of ice all the way around, right?
Mine would be level if I had a deck. So.
Yeah, so we have a deck. This is like a side project. So I finally figured out how to do it, how to level it off, so I got a laser level first, and I was pointing that around, and that's like inherently flawed in so many ways because you have to get that leveled, and that's on its own tripod, which is on even ground. So I would try from different angles and I would have like 20 marks on the poles. I'm like, this is just not working at all. So the easiest way to do it was. I figured this out by myself and then went online, and this is I kind of reinvented the wheel. Like, had I just looked this up, everyone would have told me this is the way to do it. But I thought that myself, I was impressed with my engineering skills to figure this out. I tied a rope to each corner pole, and I brought that rope across, all the way diagonally across the rink, and then I tied it around, all the boards down the sides and in the backs, and I hung levels on those ropes, and then moved them up and down. Move the rope up and down on each side of the pole until that rope was level. And that rope being level, then I had my marks I could draw on the poles to where I needed to draw. So that's how you do it. There you go. So I thought that was pretty cool until I realized that that's how people have been doing this forever. Because I'm like, I should patent this. This is a great way of leveling something. But anyway.
My wife, by the way, who's sitting, who knows everything about that, said she knew how to do that. So.
Okay. See, but I honestly, no one told me how to do this. I completely invented this. In my head, this was all. And my wife who's an engineer, a PhD, came home and said, "Yeah, why didn't you just tie strings to both of the posts?" I'm like, "Okay, yeah, that makes sense." But I am not an. I've built a couple. Thank you.
That would be too easy.
I think the outdoor building of a rink is like one of the coolest things. I wouldn't attempt it because I don't really have the skills, but wow.
Well, I don't have the skills.
Yeah, I've skated on them, and it's more fun than skating indoor for sure. So.
Last year, the coolest thing, I would have loved to have this when I was a kid. This would have been like a dream come true. But so the coolest thing last year was one morning, this rink is sort of directly below our bedroom window. So where the bedroom is, that where my wife and I are, is the rink is sort of directly below that. So it was, I don't know, it was like Saturday morning, 7:30 a.m. My daughter had a couple friends sleep over, and I wake up at 7:30 in the morning to the sound of skates and sticks on the ice outside. I'm like, this is awesome. Like my daughter is taking it upon herself, gotten skates on, gotten her friends on skates. Because you know what I did to get skates for kids in the neighborhood last year? I went on eBay and I found a skating rink that was going out of business in Maryland, and I bought 50 pairs of rental skates for $100.
Wow.
Yeah, so we got our own little thing going on. So to hear it at 7:30 in the morning, to hear this down, and then look outside and see them skating in the backyard, I'm like, that was all worth it. That was just.
I hope you got an industrial supply of Desenex to spray in those skates.
Oh yeah, you don't want to put your feet in it. But that, for the, when someone comes over and you have a rink, it's like we have an outdoor rink. That's really nice. I don't often travel with my skates, so I don't know. I didn't know that. So, but now hey, we've got a whole selection of skates right here for you. So hey, there you go. The theory in the Eklund household is if it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. So that's how we live our life here. But let's get
nothing exceeds like excess.
Just and it's not like about money overdoing. It's about just like the R2D2s. They didn't cost a lot. They just took a lot of time and a lot of planning to do. So that's how we'd like to do things here. If there's one way of making it cooler, we'll make it cooler. So anyway, that's how we do it. All right, so let's move on to the show here. We'll go.
For next year's project, you got to build a Zamboni machine.
I know. I tried last year. I had an idea. Someone sent me the plans online because I said, "How do you build one?" And there's some cool homemade Zambonis that are built. This is a whole world, and it really last year did become like my personal. I was my own Dan Craig, like I was out there checking the ice at 2 a.m, flooding it with warm water. I was doing the whole 9 yards. I was loving it, and there's nothing better than to do that. And then you wake up in the morning and the ice is perfect. I'm out there chipping away. I attach those ice chippers that you would use for your windshield and on your. No, I attached paint chippers to like 20-foot PVC tubes, and I'm out there. I'm chips from the side. I'm like chipping at the ice, getting all the nicks out. I was having fun with it. Yeah, it was all good. And then the best thing is when it melted, because it was 12 inches deep in parts and was pretty deep in general. When it melted, my daughter thought that was the most fun that she had all year, because then it became floating icebergs, and she would she could jump from one to the other to the other. She would skate and then jump over the hole and then jump to the next iceberg and then jump to the next one. So that's the real fun. So good times. All right, let's get going here. Oh, I didn't get the chat room going. They're mad at that. Hold on one second. I just forgot to put the chat room in the blog. That's not cool. They're not going to be happy about that. Hold on. Just give me 1 second. What do you got going on, Mike? Anything exciting there?
Well, no. It was funny because in watching the Cranky Hockey Writers yesterday, Eric Dahachik was talking about, I don't remember what he exactly called them, but songs with the same title that were dramatically different.
Yeah.
I came up with one, and they were fairly different songs. If you remember, Robert Plant did a song called "Ship of Fools."
Yep.
And then the band World Party did a song called "Ship of Fools," and they're completely different songs, different tempos, completely different, but both great. I love both of them. They're both on my iPod.
I love this concept. There is no reason that Eric Dahachik is not writing as a music writer somewhere right now.
Well, I suggested to you, I think a once a month thing with you, me, Eric, and Russ Cohen. I can go on my prog rock rants and vent on how King Crimson's not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame ahead of Green Day.
All right, that's awesome. All right, we are ready. Thanks. Sorry, chat room. You guys are set. Apologize for leaving you out in the cold there, hanging out to dry. We're all good. Forgive me. All right, here we go. We'll start the show now.
Friday.
Mike, Ty, Kevin, since we don't have any Josh today. Friday, December 29th, 19th.
Jeez.
Superman. Here we go. Smiles. Hey, Hockey World. It's Friday. Thank God. It's December 19th, 2014.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Ty Anderson.
I'm Kevin Allen of USA Today Sports.
And I am Eklund, and you're watching the HockeyBuzzCast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes to you Monday through Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, where we try to give you all the news so you don't have to pay attention to anything but the games. If you don't want to pay attention to the games, we'll talk about them too. It's up to you, but if you don't want to pay attention to any of those, you probably should be watching a podcast on some other subject. But we'll start here today in the hockey world. So yeah, it's great to have Ty back. We were all talking about you a little bit last week, Ty, because we realized that the mumps. You are the most susceptible to the mumps because of your age. Kevin has become the foremost authority on hockey and the mumps. It's his next book, I believe, Hockey and the Mumps.
Yeah, exactly.
Ty, have you been around in the locker room with any players that have the mumps yet?
Yeah, I've been going in with these hazmat suits. No one wants to talk to me, but I've had a lot of fun and I feel safe. I've been in the locker rooms. I was a bit nervous going to the St. Louis room a few weeks back when they were in Boston, just because of it. But I feel like I'm not high-fiving them or checking them into the stall, so I feel like it's okay. But yeah, no, I mean that's something that's I guess in the back of my mind going in. It is sort of a weird epidemic that's going around, and it seems like every team is getting hit by it at this point. At least one guy or two guys. I know Olli Mata now is another one. So the list just keeps on growing, and you had a feeling that it was going to. This isn't something that just kind of stays in one locker room, especially with the physicality and with just the nature of hockey. It seems something like this spreads rather easily. And I mean, what can you really do? You hear guys say, "Well, get another shot, get another shot." I mean, how many can you really take? Sidney Crosby took 3.
Yeah, I know. It's great, and yet he's back again, of course, and he's fine. But my gosh, the news today, a couple other things are happening. So right now, the trade freeze is tonight. Anything, Kevin, that you think is going to happen before the trade freeze?
Well, I know there's more chatter than there has been. I talked to a couple of GMs and said that it really has picked up a little bit because we've talked about this before. GMs like a deadline that sort of brings everyone together. But I still don't feel like there's going to be anything real significant. But the Winnipeg Jets made the move that they did, yesterday. Now I'm drawing a complete blank.
Jay Harrison.
Jay Harrison for a 6th-round pick. Paul Maurice knew him obviously reasonably well. He's a big guy, but I kind of thought Kevin Cheveldayoff was under some pressure there. Like, everybody's taken note that he has not been an aggressive trader, and to be honest, I'm a little surprised at that because I knew him in the AHL when he was with the Chicago Wolves, and this was a guy that was viewed to be kind of an up-and-coming star in the managerial world, and since he's gotten to Winnipeg, he's shown himself to be more conservative than I would have guessed. But you never know whether that reflects to the fact that you have an owner who's involved. But in this case, the Jets had lost top 4 defensemen, and they really needed someone. So I think if there are going to be deals, I think it's going to be deals like that, where kind of a veteran guy moves for a draft pick. But I still believe that teams have to get down, that more salary has to have been spent so that teams have room. So I think everybody's still waiting to push as close to March as you can get for any of the bigger trades.
And I think that's going to be the key for Winnipeg, Kevin, because with their financial, I mean, they're making money, but I don't think they really want to spend a ton of money. And if they're in the playoff race in January and February, you could see them probably acquiring a couple rental players to help them get into the playoffs, because a playoff run there has been few and far between, and I think with the talent that they have, it's conceivable, but I think they'll need a little bit of support down the line if they're gonna make the playoffs.
I agree with you more on Cheveldayoff too, Kevin. I mean, I knew him very well before with the Chicago Wolves. He was one of these guys who was always talking around, but he was always a guy who liked to talk about things. And you would think would be, and the Wolves were aggressive because the Wolves were, they were basically an NHL team in the way they treated themselves. I mean, they were totally different than most AHL teams. They had the budget. They could do anything they wanted to. They could bring in guys. They really could spend money. So he was, I think what we saw with the Wolves was probably way more freedom than he has with the Winnipeg Jets. That's what it feels like. It feels like, that somebody's got to be telling him he can't do certain things, because I can't imagine any GM, anyone having that job for that long and being this passive. I mean, that's just boring.
Yeah. No, and you got to pass for a while there, because he's a really bright guy, and you have the sense that he knows how to build a team. It's just that sometimes you need to make a move just to make a move. We talked about this on the Cranky Hockey Writers show, that those type of moves don't happen anymore. You saw them a lot in the 1980s and into the 90s, where you were trying to shake up your team as almost a psychological tactic. You'd make a sort of lateral move that would bring in a new face into the dressing room, and that always sort of creates a little interest, because you have sort of jockeying for position. There's a new lion in the pride, and how strong is he going to be? Whose playing time is he going to get? It does sort of create a new dynamic, and I think we see fewer and fewer of those trades now. And I thought they were good for the league, because from your business, we all like to talk about player moves.
And I'm jealous of baseball these days. I mean, baseball is crazy.
Yeah. The San Diego Padres have a completely new outfield in the span of 24 hours. It's insane.
I so much want that.
And not just a new outfield, but a big name outfield.
Right.
That's like Upton and Kemp. I mean, like
looking at 6-player deals and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, ever since I was a kid, I've loved the winter meetings in baseball, because you knew the landscape was going to change so dramatically, and it was probably one of the most exciting. I probably liked the winter meetings in baseball as much as I did the World Series when I was a kid, because you knew there was going to be a lot of people that were going to move to different teams.
Yeah, the deal between San Diego, Tampa Bay, and Washington was a 3-team, 13-player deal.
When was it? We've never seen anything like that in hockey. I mean, I'm dying for something like that. We have rumors of multiplayer trades. Kevin, we and I have talked about this before many times. The rumors of multiplayer trades spur up all the time, and you're like, they never happen. Heck, they never happen.
Well, it never happen, but they rarely happen.
I know, but the Gilmore trade was a long time ago, right? So, I mean, come on.
Yeah, well, it's like the GM said, too. It's hard enough to make a team in the salary cap world between 2 teams. Now you try to interject 3 teams.
Yeah.
And it really becomes, hard, because you're dealing with 3 different salary caps and, trying to shuffle the players. But, what I said to him at the time, and I still believe this, is that, but that's how you make the 2-team trade work, is by bringing in a third party who has, the cap variance that you need, or a place to park a contract that you need to get rid of. So, there's a lot of reasons. But, the Winnipeg situation, and we've touched on this, but haven't gone into great detail on it. They're much better, I think, than anybody anticipated they were going to be, primarily, as Michael said the other day, because of their goaltending. I was looking at the save percentage there. I was actually looking about the Minnesota Wild. I want to talk about them a little bit.
Yeah.
I was doing a comparison of goaltending numbers, and I was, still, as much as I knew what was going on with the goaltending in Winnipeg, the fact that they were playing well, I was still surprised at the numbers. Hutchinson's at .937, Pavlik is still at .916, and when you do a comparison, let's talk about the Minnesota Wild right now, because I think they're interesting. And my take on them this morning was, I think the perception is right now that they're a underachieving team. We expected more from them than we've seen. They're 4 points out of a playoff. But my take is I think what they really are is a team laying in the weeds.
Yeah.
I think this team, got overrun a little bit by the mumps. Not a little bit. They were overrun by the mumps.
Yeah.
Particularly on their defensive side of the game. Their power play hasn't been very good. I think we can lay blame on Thomas Vanek on that to a certain extent. I looked up his numbers. He's averaged 13 power play goals a year when he was in Buffalo, and he has 1 this season. We're almost at the halfway point. He's only got 4 goals total. Now, it hasn't impacted their goal total number in general, but on the power play, I think it's sort of had an impact. But the real reason, in my mind, that the Wild haven't been where they should be is their goaltending numbers. Like their save percentages are down below 905 during. This is the year of the goalie. Like if you're not 920, you're not anyone in this season in the NHL. And I think they're fighting with Winnipeg, whose numbers I just said, and the LA Kings, who both of their goalies are above 920. And we can talk about advanced stats all we want, but save percentage is still a pretty telling statistic. And I think that's where Minnesota's at. And for all those reasons, and also they have 3 games in hand on LA, so they're only 4 points behind. But I still think they're going to be there at the end. Is my point.
I agree with you. They remind me of the Bruins a few years ago, Ty, too. Like along the lines of that, they've played less games than everybody. It feels like the entire time.
Yeah.
Like a couple years ago, where the Bruins hadn't played so fewer games than everybody else in the beginning of the year, and then and it's hard for sometimes a team to get into a rhythm when they're playing twice a week, 3 times a week, always. I mean, they still have games in hand, like you said, Kevin, But between the mumps, I mean, how they started off, you saw them in the beginning of the season. They looked like they were as good as anyone in the NHL. I mean, they looked as strong as any team out there. But yeah, I mean, you've been through this, Ty. What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I look at the Minnesota Wild, and I see a really talented team, especially up front. It makes you almost not worry about Vanek in a way, because you feel that they have the pieces around him, whether it's a Parise, a Pominville, even Nino Niederreiter has had a great year. They have the pieces around there to kind of work through that. And with power plays, they can get hot, they can get cold. They tend to sort of fix themselves, I think, with talent over time. But the goaltending does kind of scare me with this team. I think it's painfully average with Nicholas Backstrom. He's not going to take you anywhere, I don't think, at this point in his career. I kind of have worries about Kuemper if he's healthy, what he can do. Josh Harding is in the AHL. I think he has a 920 through 2 games. So maybe he gets back into the fold somehow, some way. But that's the biggest thing holding this team back, I think, is their goaltending. You need elite goaltending, especially in that division. If you emerge as one of the 3 in the Central, even if you're a wild card team for that matter, you have to go through the Pacific. You got to deal with Jonathan Quick or John Gibson or Frederick Anderson or Antti Niemi. These guys are pretty solid goaltenders, so you need strong goaltending, and they haven't really gotten it thus far. They've had some average nights, some good nights, and a lot of bad nights.
Yeah,
Let me even take that point a step further, just in how bad it's been. I looked that up this morning. As we all know, Kuemper started out with 3 shutouts in his first 4 games this season.
Right.
And now his save percentage, as I said, I think it's 906. And he's just had a string of inconsistency, and a lot of those games have been over the last 5 games. He's well below 900 in his save percentage, and Backstrom is starting to play more, but even he has given up 3 goals or 4 goals in each of his last 4 starts. So that's not the level of goaltending, and a coach or a GM will just say, well, there's defensive issues as well. But, you don't pay goalies to make the easy saves. You don't pay them to win on the nights when your defense is playing exceptional hockey. You pay them big money to win on the nights when your defense isn't playing well.
Right.
I just think the Minnesota goaltenders have not stepped up and produced, the sort of world-class efforts that you now need in the NHL on a regular basis in order to make the playoffs.
I mean, they've really had a bizarre goaltending story for the last 5 years. If you go through what's happened, I mean, it's been crazy in general. I mean, you've got moments like Brizgalov playing in the playoffs last year against the Chicago Blackhawks in a Game 7. You've got Harding going at times looking like the best goalie in the NHL, but then getting this disease, then getting hurt, which had nothing to do with disease, or did it. And then you had Backstrom the one year, like 3 years ago, Backstrom carrying them for a while, playing out of his mind. When I think that everybody thought he was pretty much done, he showed up and had this one last season about 3 years ago that really got them into the playoffs for the first time, and then gets hurt on the warm-ups in the first game of the playoffs. Remember this? And then they go away from, and then they go to Harding, who is healthy or not healthy, no one knows. They lose to Chicago in a tough series. I mean, it's been just a up and down and up and down. I mean, they've had at times 4 goalies.
Well, but that's the fact, and that's the problem, Mac. Is like when you have 4 goalies, you don't have 1 goalie, and that's been the problem with this organization for a number of years. And people who look at Minnesota and look at them objectively during the offseason are saying, okay, go after Ryan Miller, go after Jonas Hiller, get yourself a number 1 goaltender, and solidify a position that has been a weak spot for you over the number of years. But what they did was they stayed status quo. They hoped that Harding could come back. He had his incident with his broken foot, and now he's in the AHL. Kemper and Backstrom have had health and injury problems and inconsistency problems, and now I think they called up John Curry from Iowa. Right. I mean, this situation does not lend itself to stability in a Western Conference where you need solid goaltending to make the playoffs and to succeed in the playoffs. I mean, St. Louis, they had a much more solid goaltending situation with Elliott and Jake Allen, and they went for Marty Brodeur. So I have a feeling before the trade deadline, Minnesota is going to have to do the same thing to stabilize that problem.
And they might want to do that, but I've talked to them about this in the past, and they're like, listen, if we bring in Ryan Miller or we bring in Marty Brodeur, like was rumored last year at the trade deadline, I've been told, what if Harding's healthy? What if Backstrom's okay? Suddenly we've got all these. What if Kemp? Suddenly we've got all these goalies. They felt like of the 3 of them, that one of them would at least be okay. You can understand where they don't want to go get another goalie. I mean, they've got all these goalies are out there, and yet all of them have these. Backstrom's inconsistent. Kemper's, I think, just young. I mean, I think he's going to be a good goalie. And Harding is either incredible or not playing. Apparently, that's what it feels like. He's always been in the NHL, right? So.
You can't put up the what if scenario if it's not going to happen, and none of these guys have stayed consistent or healthy for the last 3 years. So in that instance, you have to rule that out and go.
Then you
out
have to get rid of one of them because teams hate having 3 goalies. Sure. So now they're going to go out and trade for another one or pick up another one. They have to move one of them.
Let me bring this up. The problem with goalies is 2 is too many, and sometimes 5 is not enough.
Right.
In terms of sorting that out. So I understand what the Wild is saying, but the other issue for the Wild is where do you go? Like, where would you go right now if you said you need a goalie who you could count on, who could upgrade your goaltending? The only goaltenders that I know are available are the Buffalo Sabres, and are they any more or less proven than the guys you have? I mean, Enroth's having a nice season. In the shootout, he's stopped 17 of 18. He's been a primary reason why the Sabres have started to win. Nouveau has got good numbers, better numbers than you see in Minnesota. But bringing them in, are they? Do you suddenly get comfortable that they're the guys? Go
Kevin, they're a low risk option if you want to try something because they're both UFAs. I mean, you're not.
Buffalo's going to hold on to them though. Buffalo doesn't have to move them, and they're going to demand something for them, especially Enroth, because Enroth's got a value right now. And if Buffalo was smart, they would trade him because he's keeping him out of the Connor McDavid sweep, basically.
They'll demand something for him, but I don't think they're married to him. I think that they'll trade.
Well, they'll trade one. I think they're going to try to keep. Tim Murray did not tip his hand to me, but I talked to him about the goaltenders, and he admitted that they're playing much better than he thought they would, and he said the 2 of them have forced him to sort of reconsider what he's going to do moving forward with his goaltenders. Now, I think what that meant to me was, I may keep one of those guys. They're young enough that they could still be part of the solution, sort of moving forward. And where do they go for a goalie?
Right.
There's not a strong cast that's going to be available in the free agent marketplace. So I would keep one of those guys. They're playing well for them. So.
Well, I know that they like I know that they like the Russian kid Makarov, who's in their minor league system, but there's no guarantee he's going to be ready for the NHL for at least another couple years. But I mean, of the three teams that I have heard from various reports that are could make a deal before the trade freeze tonight, Buffalo is one of the three. I mean, they made a minor deal, Luke Adam for Jerry D'Amigo a couple days ago, but they might see the opportunity of moving a defenseman out there to a team like Winnipeg or another team that needs a defenseman because they have veterans like Benoit and Mazzaros out there. But the other two are Arizona and Boston. And I wanted to ask Ty because there's been the rumors about them with St. Louis, with TJ Oshie and Berglund as a possibility, and Zach Cassian from Vancouver, which I'm like, that's the poor man's Milan Lucic. I don't know about that one.
And then Taylor Hall, of course, we have to mention as well. Ty, you've got a lot to talk about here. But I mean, I'm not putting out that rumor. That's why my article yesterday was, what the hell is going on here? I don't see Taylor Hall being moved. I don't see a team that hasn't had the guts to move Yakupov having the guts to move Taylor Hall. But the only thing I hear, Ty, is that Doug, you do have a really gosh, why can't I think of it? Come on, Dougie Hamilton.
Yeah.
You have you have there a piece that makes sense for Edmonton. If a Hall trade happens, Hamilton's obviously involved, right? So this is escalating into something pretty big. What are your thoughts on all this, Ty?
I think if Hamilton is part of this package, it's a no-go for the Bruins. I don't think they want to move him. He's sort of the heir apparent to Zdeno Chara.
Yep.
That looks like that may happen sooner rather than later. When you look at, Chara's his age is beginning to show. I think he's a monster in the gym, but at a certain point, the pace of the NHL does wear you down, and I think Hamilton has already stepped up in the absence of Chara and shown that he can be a top-pairing defenseman within the next year or two, or even right now. So I think that if Hamilton's a part of this package, it's a non-starter for the Bruins, and that's a problem right there because the Edmonton Oilers will not trade a quarter for four nickels rather.
Right.
So you're not going to just get a bunch of bit pieces and get Taylor Hall. That's not how this is going to work. And that's why I think it's such a long shot for the Boston Bruins, especially when you look at sort of what they're going through right now. They'd like a right-handed shot right wing. Taylor Hall is a shooting left wing, which, again, he's a superstar talent. He's an unbelievable player. He could definitely fit here. They wanted him the first time around during that draft, but, with Sagan and Tyler or Taylor, who's it going to be? They wanted Hall. So when they didn't get him, they were bummed. So there's always been that attachment there. But I think they have the pieces to make a deal work with a Hamilton or a Malcolm Subban. It just comes back to their willingness to do it, and I don't think that Peter Chiarelli is willing to move those pieces out.
The funny thing is, would it have been easier to trade for Taylor Hall if they hadn't have made the Sagan deal? Edmonton is looking for a center and a big center, and Sagan would have fit the bill, and maybe there would have been an opportunity there.
Yeah, I mean, hindsight's 20/20 with the Sagan deal. I think I'm starting to come around on it and say that, hey, I was wrong, and this was a pretty uneven trade for the Boston Bruins when you look at how Louis Eriksson really hasn't meshed on that top line, or, he has to play on the third line with Soderberg, and he's had injury problems, no doubt, but you certainly expected more than 15 goals, 16 goals in 95 games as a Bruin, so it's been a tough go for Eriksson. Riley Smith, though, he's starting to come around. The Tyler Sagan trade, though, does look pretty bad on them, and that sort of complicated the scope of how you trade the NHL among Boston fans. Because Boston fans are like, just trade 3 guys and you'll get Taylor Hall. No, that doesn't happen. The Boston Bruins couldn't gamble, and it didn't really work out right now. So
right.
That's one of the things that I think Boston's sort of dealing with. It's that bitterness of letting a guy who's leading the league in goals and points walk away for what looks like 3-4 bit players. And that's a tough thing for the Bruins to swallow right now, and they got to try to figure out what they're going to do, but I don't think Hall is going to be their answer. Not in season, anyways. Maybe they revisit it in the off season, but if he's still in Edmonton. But I don't think it will happen for Boston.
What about the St. Louis and the Vancouver? I mean, Cassian makes a bit of sense because after they trade Boychuk, there's not as much toughness on that team, and Cassian is a professional disturber of the highest order. I've heard Eriksson being tied to St. Louis because of Doug Armstrong, and I don't know if Eriksson was there when Hitchcock was the coach in Dallas, but there was some connection there, and possibly they want a more veteran forward going into the playoffs. What have you heard on those?
Well, I mean, Erickson sort of fits the bill, I think, for St. Louis. You look at what they have with their forwards. He's a strong two-way player. He's smart. He knows what to do with the puck. He doesn't take too many gambles. I think that he's a guy that could fit there. I know T.J. Oshie's the name everyone links to Boston. It's an interesting fit. He's on the smaller side versus what they typically do with Krejci on that top line. But maybe he's a player that they could slide in there and have some nice sort of chemistry with Lucic on one side, Oshie on the other. That really would open up space for the Bruins, especially in the middle, or their defense want to get their point guys more involved. I like that idea. Again, I think Louis' no trade kind of complicates a lot of things. If he is actually on the market, whether they can convince him to move it. With Vancouver, it's funny to see Jim Benning. He knows this Bruins team pretty well. He was heavily involved in a lot of the trades and signings they made during this era as the assistant GM of the Bruins. It wouldn't surprise me if he had interest in getting Louis Eriksson to play with the Swedes on that top line in Vancouver. I know Radim Verbata's had a great year with them, but that Sedin Eriksson line was one of the lines at the Olympics for Team Sweden, so maybe that's an option there. Zach Kassian, he doesn't have the prettiest of hands. He's scored 14 goals, but that might be a guy that they feel.
You're wrong. He's got beautiful hands. I've seen him. They're phenomenal. Continue.
Yeah, but his skates are really sharp. Ask Dave Boland.
Yeah, right.
He might fit in on that top line with Lucic. They may feel that if he has a Cam Neely or Milan Lucic in his ear telling him how to play, he might become more of an impact player. And who knows? Maybe he'd be the next Lucic if they decided to move on from Lucic a year from now or 2 years from now when his contract's up. So, that's another option. It's intriguing, but again, these no trade clauses, and there are a whole lot of them on the Bruins, really complicate what this team can do, especially at the deadline.
The Canucks should be wary of any trades with the Bruins. We remember the Cam Neely for Barry Peterson deal back before you were born, Ty. So maybe
who can forget that one? Well, you know what? I also have to address this because I'm getting all kinds of texts about this Steve Mason injury. Steve Mason got hurt at practice today about an hour ago, and it's a bizarre injury. It's so bizarre that no one's saying a word about it. It was non-contact related. He just sort of collapsed a little bit. Yeah. Had to be helped off the ice. Had to be helped out of his equipment. People are saying it's serious, but no one is. But the Flyers canceled all media after the practice. No one was allowed into the room anywhere. So I've got some people in the organization that say they're going to get back to me as soon as they hear something, but. Just kind of wanted to address that because that is kind of ongoing as we talk right now.
Well, I don't know if Ray Emery can really take on the starting role for a long period of time with his health concerns with his hip. Back in I just don't know if he can handle the workload. Who is it? Rob Zepp is the third string goalie.
Rob Zepp's a hell of a story. He's a great story though. he's played everywhere in the world. He's a big hockey buzz, and he watches the podcast too. He's a great story, but yeah, I don't think they're going to no offense to Mr. Zepp or Emery, I don't think that that's where this team wants to go. Mason's been playing very well for them. Mm-hmm. And has been the reason that they're at all anywhere. And to say they're at all anywhere right now, they're their last 10, they're 3-4-3, so they're.
But if Mason is hurt long term, what options are out there? Thomas Vokoun is retired. Marty Brodeur has been picked up by the Blues.
Kevin, what with the Vokoun? Did you hear anything on the Vokoun retirement besides he just couldn't find a team, or is there something?
No, it was simply that he just didn't have any options.
Doesn't that feel amazing? Doesn't that seem amazing that Vokoun couldn't find a team?
Yeah, well, they're just it's so limited. There are only 60 spots, and he just couldn't find it. And he grew frustrated, and you got to stay in top condition, and you're working out, and he just finally decided he had enough. And look, I think it was the fact that he had gone through as much as he has.
Yeah.
Like he's had, the blood disorder and the, I think he had a blood clot too. So he's had several injuries. But I talked to a couple of people about it and said, he really didn't get any looks, let alone any, he just never came close. But that's interesting. The Mason thing sounds a bit scary to me.
It does.
when you eliminate the media availability, that usually says it's pretty serious. I mean, that sounds like something even beyond just a regular injury. So
Yeah, it does. It does. I'm trying. No one's saying a word right now, so that also implies to me. I mean, I'm not even saying don't talk about this.
By the way, just going back to the Erickson, I wanted to chime in there. I've heard a lot about this to St. Louis, and there's a feeling that Doug Armstrong is going to be able to talk him into it if it comes to that. That they have some working knowledge of each other, and there's some trust there. So it'll be interesting to see. I actually think that would be a good fit for St. Louis. I think you'd restore the roar a little bit with Erickson by sending him to St. Louis. And I'm not buying any of the Zach Hall, or excuse me, Taylor Hall trade. Taylor Hall trade rumors. That just isn't going to happen. Craig McTavish is not going to win over ownership or fans in Edmonton by trading Taylor Hall, and just as the Boston Bruins are not going to trade Dougie Hamilton. I mean, those type of trades just don't happen. We were talking before about multiplayer trades, but trading centerpieces. When does that happen? They only happens under special circumstances, and I don't see any special circumstances here.
And I would almost.
Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
I would almost buy Berglund as an option for the Bruins over Oshie, because with Soderberg as a UFA, Berglund probably would fit in as a number 3 center on the Bruins behind Krejci and Bergeron, and that might be more of a need. Strength up the middle has always been the core of the Bruins, and Berglund is a big body and a good two-way center that, if they lose Soderberg to free agency, then he would sort of plug right in. So I think that might even be a more viable option than Oshie is.
A quick thing go ahead, Ty.
One of the big things about the Bruins is that I've been told that they're into the idea of dumping salary. If they can make a trade and gain $1 million, in cap space for a bigger deal, they're going to do it. So maybe some of these teams they're reaching out to it's to a St. Louis, to a Vancouver, especially Jim Benning, and saying, hey, would you like Gregory Campbell at $1.6 million, or would you like so and so for this? Matt Barkowski, another guy, Adam McQuaid, just to build some cap space here. So I wouldn't be surprised if while these guys are talking, it's for something far, sort of simpler than we were making it out to be.
Well, I was intrigued by the rumor that you put in your blog this morning regarding Ryan O'Reilly, which all you have to do is say Ryan O'Reilly, and the first word that comes up in my mind is Toronto, and I know that.
We've been down the road before, and it had really disappeared since the summer. I have a couple of sources in Colorado that I really trust, and but one said finally that there were indeed rekindled talks, very low-level discussions, as he described it.
Mm-hmm.
Ask your friend if she likes me, that kind of stuff, about Ryan O'Reilly and the Maple Leafs, and that the Colorado likes a lot of the defensemen on the Maple Leafs. They need a defenseman. They need Patrick Roy wants to make a trade. He actually does want to, and it's so funny, Kevin, because we just talked. He actually does want to make a trade to shake things up. And it's not surprising it's surprising in terms of that we just talked about this not having happened. But if anybody would, I would see Patrick Roy and Joe Sakic being the kind of guys that they would say, okay, we're going to make a trade here to shake things up. Ryan O'Reilly has not played well this year. Has come off is again had another contentious off-season negotiation with this organization. Now with 2 general managers, at some point, fool me once, shame on you, right? I know that's not the expression, but you get what I'm saying. So that's so I think that what I was told is there's a defenseman that Colorado would do this for, and I'm assuming that defenseman is probably,
Riley. It's Riley.
Yeah, right.
And there's no way in hell Toronto is trading Morgan Riley.
Right. So they're looking at Ryan O'Reilly for Morgan Riley for O'Reilly trade, right?
That's a non-starter.
So right, that's not going to happen. So because the defenseman is so much more valuable here, obviously there are other defensemen though that Toronto would be willing to trade. And I'm sure we're talking. These names weren't given to me, so that we were talking about Gardner and those guys. I'm sure Gardner's comes in. So. It does seem like, Colorado really is looking for defense. They really are looking for defense. And the problem that we all thought they would have last year, which they somehow didn't have yet, everyone didn't understand how they didn't have it, but they didn't have it. Now it's showing its face, right? They are giving up a lot of goals, and they're giving up a lot of chances, and their offense is not compensating for it. I mean, they've given up 99 goals already this year. That's kind of what we expected from their defense last year. But this is a team that's minus 21 in goal differential. The Colorado Avalanche won the division last year, so Patrick Waugh's not going to be sitting by idly here. I was told that they're going to be aggressive, and Ryan O'Reilly is a piece that they would move, and it makes sense. We've always talked about it as a piece that makes sense. So, and Toronto needs that kind of player, and Toronto has defensemen. So the pieces do match up. Whether or not it happens or not, I don't know, but it's definitely going to. I think it's going to be interesting to watch, and I think we're going to hear more of it. And I do think that if a trade like this happens, this is not an off-season trade. This would be a during-season trade. So that's just my thought on it, from who I've talked to at least. Kevin, your thoughts on this deal, possibly?
Well, I think it's interesting that what we were talking about before. One of the reasons why sometimes it's so hard, especially the world has changed for general managers too. Like there's a grading system that's now available called social media, and you can say, well, I ignore all that. But you don't, because there are people telling you what's going on with the fan base. And if you think the president of the team is not keenly aware of how his fans are reacting to news of a trade, I think you're being naive. You still have to sell season tickets. So it's to say that social media reaction doesn't matter, but it does matter in the selling of seats. So I bring that up simply because that's why these trades are so hard. Ty brought up about the reaction about did the Bruins get fleeced on the Sagan trade. So when you're going to trade, he's asking for a lot in Morgan Riley, but he's trading a really good player, and it's really a fair ask. I wouldn't do it if I believes, but it's a fair ask, just like it was a fair ask for the Buffalo Sabres to demand first Anthony Mantha and Dylan Larkin for Tyler Myers. Well, they're giving up an important piece. But can this trade happen? Well, I think it could, because maybe Riley, they can't get Riley, but maybe there's other moves they can make, would you take a chance on Jake Gardner in conjunction with someone else?
Yeah.
I wouldn't, but I bet it gets talked about.
And Ryan O'Reilly, you also have to take into account the fact that this guy has been hard to negotiate with, and the Leafs are a team that has cap issues coming up. Apparently, they're going to be in a spot where they're going to have a lot of guys they're going to have to sign at the same time, right? So they're going to be in this. You got to deal with the fact that he's a hard guy to sign, and that plays into it. People do think about that. I mean, that's definitely a factor.
Well, I mean, the factor that I see right here, right now, is that Morgan Riley. You don't know what he's going to be right now. He's in his second year. He's a top 5 pick. He's really starting to grow into a pretty decent two-way defenseman. He's been playing with Stefan Robida, and as we know, Robida is a good teacher and a good guy for a young player to emulate, and he seems to be taking after Robida and learning very well. Jake Gardner is hot or cold. Last night he was a missed defensive assignment, cost him a goal in a loss to Carolina, the worst team in the league. But he's got all this ability, and I've never seen a player more in crying need of a change of scenery, and that seems to be the case with O'Reilly. And the thing with Gardner, even though he has flaws, he's signed to a very reasonable $4 million salary for another 4 years.
Right.
For a team like Colorado, you get term and you get a guy who's locked up at a salary that, with the rising cap, that is not a prohibitive amount. And O'Reilly is a guy, and we've talked about this for 2 years. I don't think he wants to be in Colorado simply because he keeps asking for, he feels disrespected after asking for the same amount of money and being denied it that they gave Matt Duchene. It's like, I mean, he is, and probably in his mind, just on par with Duchene, and they've sort of refused to pay him on par with Duchene. So he probably wants to go someplace else and carve out his own niche. I don't know if he's a number 1 center in the league. I don't think he is. But that's the reason why Toronto would never give up Morgan Riley for him, because the only way they give him up is for a number one center. But I think they do want O'Reilly, and I think that deal could happen.
Boy, this is one of those. This trade along. I'm going to even throw the Hamilton Hall trade speculation in for a second. Along with what I said before with Tyler Myers for Nichushkin, there's some trades that you just wish you had a magic ball on. Like you could just see into the future as to how this will go, because it's so easy to sit there and say you would never trade Nichushkin for Tyler Myers. But man, 5 years from now, you might. Why wouldn't we have made that trade? Or, or the Hamilton, Dougie Hamilton for Taylor Hall. That as much as I think what Ty's saying and what you're saying, Mike, too, about the way you feel about Riley, the way Boston and Ty feel about Hamilton, are these are guys that you don't find defensemen like this very often. You don't want to move them, right? But by the same token, O'Reilly could turn out to be a absolutely perfect fit. Morgan Riley could go any which direction still. We've seen Leaf defensemen with this, and Gardner's a perfect example, right? With this kind of pedigree before.
Yeah, but Gardner was traded by Anaheim because he had flaws, and at the Leafs trade him, he'll have flaws. The thing is,
when he first came in, I get it. I mean, and the thing that it's really hard to, and also Hamilton, of course, who is also tied in forever, is the word to use, to the Maple Leafs as well. Dougie Hamilton, I love Dougie Hamilton. I think he's an excellent player. But then again, if Dougie Hamilton and Taylor Hall were both on the board at a draft right now, who would go first? It's you know what I mean. These are really. And one thing that intrigues me about the Boston rumor with Edmonton, and I don't think Hall's moving anyway either. But this is actually the first rumor that I've heard where the other team wouldn't do it. With Edmonton, like Taylor Hall, they've all been like, Edmonton would definitely do that trade. This is the first trade where Boston's not going to do that trade. That's when you start to get those rumors, you start honing in on an actual value to a player.
Well, let me ask Kevin something. Kevin, I mean, it's been the number one center has always been the centerpiece of what people are, especially in Toronto, but other teams have been chasing for years. That's the unicorn. That's what they've been looking for. I perceive that in the last year or so that the number one defenseman, the guy who can eat 25 minutes, is maybe on par and maybe even exceeded the pursuit of the number one center. And you can look at that from a guy like Matt Niskanen getting almost $6 million, who had one good year offensively. Is that a wrong perception? Because I think that's where it's going.
Well, I think definitely in the summer, defense is always the premium, because what's happened is your team is underperformed during the season. They didn't make the playoffs. They didn't rise up to your expectations, and the best way to fix any team is to make it better defensively. So, in the summer, you're always looking for defense. The problem is, and GMs will say that a top-pairing defenseman is the hardest guy to find, but sometimes they don't act like that at the draft. The romance of the scorer is always so great. That's why McKinnon gets drafted ahead of Seth Jones. I mean, so many people told me, oh, well, you guys like Seth Jones, they don't come along. You got to get them. But, you took the score because you want those goals. But I would agree with you. I mean, I think there's a lot of teams around the league that are looking for a top-pairing defenseman. The Islanders finally got one in Johnny Boychuk, but, the Edmonton Oilers, need one. The Red Wings are looking for a player of that ilk as well. So, I don't know if it's been maybe over the last few years. It's probably been slowly evolving over the last 10 years or so, when there's been a move to those guys are the most sought after players.
But I think that the right combination of factors is there with Colorado and Toronto. We said Colorado is loaded up the middle. They're going to have to pay McKinnon big money next year after the expiration, or I think either he has 1 year left, but they can sign him to an extension if they want to. They're paying Duchesne $6 million a year, and O'Reilly is not, just the problems that they've had with him over the last couple of years, just doesn't strike me as that being a long-term marriage. And Toronto, if they're going to re-signed Cody Franzen, which seems to be more on the back burner or more in the front burner now than ever. They're going to have to clear out Gardner's $4 million salary. They don't mind spending that money on up front because I think they need help up front, and especially up the middle. But Gardner, I think Gardner is on his way out. That is a deal that makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't be surprised if it happens.
Would it make more sense, though, for Colorado to call Arizona and talk about Keith Yandle?
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
Where I think, this is a guy we all know what he is. He's still 29. He's still got hockey left in front of him. He's exactly what Colorado needs in terms of a puck-moving defenseman. O'Reilly's exactly what Arizona needs, and he fits right in. He plays. It would be an important offensive player. So if I'm Colorado, I'm calling Arizona, not Toronto.
Yeah, and they're the one. I mean, that Yandle is if there was a move that went down today, it would be big. I think it could be Yandle, but that I really is kind of cooled down, which sometimes means that maybe something's getting close and no one's talking rumors right now, but no one is talking about Yandle right now that I talked to. So that could mean a lot of different things. We never really know. Quick news things before we go. I can't believe it's already 2:02. Quick hours always. Kimmo Timonen is resuming skating. So there is some hope there for the Flyers. He is resuming skating. I do believe he'll be back this year. I've thought that from talking to him early in the year, even though people were saying he wasn't going to be back, and it looks like I think he's stayed here. He wants to stay here. He's not one of those guys who wants to go back to Finland. He wants to remain in America. He likes it here. He loves Finland, of course, but he's not going to return there. His kids like it here.
Now, do you think that if he does come back and he's healthy enough to come back, that he could be somebody that Philadelphia moves at the deadline to a contending team?
He is a great trade deadline type player. I mean, if he comes back and can prove he can play, he's the perfect thing for that. When you agree, Kevin, he would be a great fit.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the veteran defenseman, who can come in and be a stabilizing influence. Yeah. Sure. I mean, how about him like Winnipeg? He'd be ideal.
Yeah, right. They would. I mean, so maybe that's how you get Dustin Byfuglien, but probably not. But Kimmo's got a lot going for him. He also has a no trade clause and loves it here, so it might be hard to convince him to go. So it's hard. There's a lot of different things going on there. But that's the other big news. I think that's all we have as far as news today. Does anybody else have anything going on right now?
Just that Max Pacioretty was injured last night in the game against Anaheim, was run into the boards by Clayton Stoner of Anaheim. The hit is not going to be reviewed by the NHL Department of Player Safety, but Pacioretty missed practice this morning, and as we all remember, it was an upper body injury, and he was sort of hurled into the boards, and he had that neck injury from the Chara hit, so. Anything upper body is always a concern for Pacioretty.
Yeah, that's for sure. I watched a little bit of that. I wanted to bring one other thing up. I was trying to find a GIF for it, and I can't. But Thomas Kopecky made an unbelievable play last night in the Flyers game. Kopecky is quite a skilled player. He's fun to watch. There's a couple guys on that team that are really fun to watch. Thomas Fleischmann still is fun to watch too. There's a guy who could be. You've written about Kevin being on the move, and he could bring a lot to a team. As Scotty Upshaw last night was flying all over the place. When he's healthy, he's an exciting player. There's some players on that team that could definitely be moved. I mean, they're still in the playoff hunt right now, but they.
Yeah. Well, Kopecky could be a real good playoff guy. He's big, he's strong, he's got skill, as you mentioned. Fleischmann, by the way, is playing much better. I talked to Dale Talon recently, and he brought up the fact that Fleischmann is starting to find his game again, and. They won't move him if they're in the hunt because he can be pretty valuable.
He can skate. I mean, when he's up on his skates, he's a tough player to play against. He comes through the neutral zone with a lot of speed and strength, and is very good at cutting in. Kopecky was behind the net and made this play that having played hockey as a goalie my whole life, and Ty, you're like another. We played men's leagues and stuff like that. I don't understand why NHL players don't do this all the time. More often, Kopecky's behind the net, and he flipped it over top of the net in front, to Scotty Upshaw, who was with a couple other players in front of the net. And because Steve Mason is the kind of goalie who is, he was like 7 feet tall on skates, but when the puck's behind, he's often low, down, really low. He's down below the crossbar, and he's down, his head's down, and he's on the post, or he's got one leg on one post, one leg on the other. And Kopecky sees this, sees that Mason's down low, sees that there's a defenseman and Upshaw in front, and flips it over top of the net, which is a skilled move, obviously, but not incredibly skilled. I mean, any NHL player can do this, and it creates. I mean, they didn't score, but what amount of commotion this creates, like in front of the net. I mean, this, I don't get it. I don't get why this isn't a regular play, Ty.
I think Grabovski tried it against Tuukka Rask, and I think the playoffs, that series.
Mm-hmm.
I think he tried it in like game 1 or game 2, and everyone in the crowd was like, "Oh, you thought it was actually going in for a minute."
Yeah, and how is this, like, how do we remember, like, a specific, how does this not happen all the time?
Sorry, the only thing I remember about Grabovski in the Boston series is the fact that he was -10 in 7 games.
I mean, Kev, you've seen it done. I mean, why don't we see it more often? I don't get it.
That's a great question. I don't have an answer for it, but it wouldn't take long if it happened with frequency for somebody to, figure out how to thwart it. So.
But how? I mean, literally. I mean, the goalie can stand up more. But even just putting that thought into a goal, like when I was as a goalie, when the puck goes from side to side, you are thinking post and post. You're thinking,
Right.
I'm going to stay on this post. I'm going to go to that post. I got to get quickly. You are not thinking above your head. You're not. That's just not. So the second Kopecky does this once, now every time he goes behind the net, Mason's got a third factor he's got to put into his mind. That's, even if he never does it again, it just throws the goalie for a loop. I just don't get it why it's not done.
Datsy does that. So.
Does he do it? Yeah, and it's
And this is a copycat league, Ak. I mean, I know that Van Riemsdyk has been doing this little move at the side of the net, sort of going in between his legs and flipping the puck, roofing it. And he's very adept with his in close. And you start to see other players starting to do the same move. It's sort of like just like an inside-out move, and then he roofs it. And if you have the ability, I mean, that's another thing that goalies have to think about when a player's standing close to the net.
This is just such a common occurrence that a player is behind the net like this, like Kopecky was, and it's just it by himself because on a power play or whatever, he's by himself, and normally it happens like 20 times a game, and I just am surprised that we can all remember specific instances. That's how few times it's happened. Anyway. We'll be back again tomorrow. I just wanted to throw that out there.
No, we'll be back on Monday.
We won't be back again tomorrow at all. No, we'll be with our families, loving our weekend before Christmas tomorrow, holiday shopping. We'll be back on Monday. And next week we'll have shows on Monday and Tuesday, and we might be doing some double-up shows on Monday and Tuesday because one of the things I want to do, the rumor chart is launching, which is going to be fun. Another is I want to do our year in review. A year in review show that we might, we might put one we might record 2 in one day next week, and let you guys know if you want to watch it live that we release on Christmas Eve or something like that, so we can all have off on Christmas Eve. And then we won't be doing a show on Friday, I don't think next week, Ty. I'm not sure on that one, but that's probably not that one. So probably won't see you again until New Year's. But anyway, we'll talk. We'll let you know for sure. Maybe we'll grab you on for one of those extra shows we do. Remember, guys, have a great weekend. Shop till you drop. Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. Talk to you soon.